Okay. Can everybody see my screen here? Anybody can answer.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thanks, man. So welcome for those of you that are here tonight. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists that have volunteered their time to join us tonight. My name is Jesus Alvarado. I'm the mentorship committee chair for the Pennsylvania PM&R Fellowship. With me tonight, I have some amazing panelists who have volunteered their time, like I mentioned. I'll allow them to introduce themselves, kind of people from all over. So if you guys could please start introducing yourselves one by one.
I guess I can go first. Hey everyone, my name is Justin. I'm actually one of the presidents of the fellowship. So if you're here, thanks for all your hard work, Jesus. I'm a transitional year right now in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, hopefully going into PM&R this year. So I can go next. I'm Max. I went to Drexel for medical school. Shout out my DuCom folks. And I did my transitional year at Santa Clara Valley in San Jose, California. And then I'm currently a PGY-2 at Stanford in California, hopefully going into interventional spine or pain in 2-ish years.
Awesome. I don't know if we have our other two panelists here with us yet. Something may have come up, which is completely fine. Um, I'll go ahead and allow them to introduce themselves if they decide to join. But to make sure that we're not wasting any time, I will get started. Like I mentioned, I have a short presentation that I wanted to give. I'll get started now. This is I think like really like relevant stuff for all the PM&R applicants, and I hope this is helpful. Just a quick I guess info. This is all kind of like information that I've gathered from my resources, and I don't think that this is an exhaustive list. There's a lot of nuances, I think, with PM&R applications in general, and so this is just advice that I've gathered from online resources, which I've linked. So hopefully this is helpful. So just wanted to start with basically explaining like the match process. For those of you that have applied through or registered for the NRMP, basically, I just wanted to give some history. It started in 1953 at the request of medical students to provide kind of like a fair mechanism for matching U.S. residency positions. Since then, it's kind of had major updates. So it started actually as the National Inter-Association Committee and then became the NRMP in 1978. Fellowships were introduced to the match process in 1984. Rank lists were introduced in 1999. And the whole system became web-based in 2002. Um, Match Week and SOAP program was introduced in 2012. This replaced kind of like the scramble beforehand. Also, there was like an all-in policy put in place for programs in 2013, which basically made all the residency programs have to use this match process, with exceptions to like recent programs who have transitioned to other programs um, for their matching process. In 2020, MD and that should say DO, not US students. I'll update that. Became a single match for residency positions. And then in 2021, SOAP rounds transitioned to 1 day, which is still what happens today. Something that I didn't know is that the match process actually is based on a really good algorithm that actually won the Nobel Prize in 2012 for the economic sciences. They actually call it the Gale-Shapley algorithm. And notoriously, it's done pretty well for most applicants. Um, these are kind of some stats. Their stats published yearly from match results. But for the most part, people do end up matching at their top selections. So kind of like basing or kind of explaining like how the match process works. really what if you go into reading more about the algorithm, you'll see that it really does favor applicants. It favors the choices that us as applicants that we put first. This is kind of like an illustration trying to show like how the match process works. I'll basically just explain it real quick. It's just, and I'm sure most of you do know this information, but just to reiterate, um, as an applicant, you put your choices, and the algorithm basically bases it off of those choices. The algorithm then will take into account the hospital's first choices. And then it's essentially a match. And so what you see on the left is basically the applicant, putting in their top choice, which is in the white arrow. So you can see that Dr. One put his first choice or his or her first choice for Hospital A, as did Dr. Two and Dr. Three. Now the Hospital A put their first choice for the Dr. One, and since they both ranked each other highly, that's why 1A is a match. Because Hospital A is now taken, Dr. Two, um, uh, I'm getting a little lost here, but I think essentially because the first hospital is taken, now looking at Hospital B, um, the uh, the next selection would be for Doctor Three. And so it's essentially basically basing it off of the doctor's choice. It's kind of just explaining it from online med ed, how the ranking process works. And these are just essentially like the next steps for all the applicants that have submitted their applications this cycle. And so really where we're at in the process is generating rank lists. And so via the NRMP's website, applicants are to enter their rank lists and then certify it before the March 4th deadline. Also, applicants are to have a plan in place for SOAP, just in case. SOAP itself is, like I mentioned, primarily on or has a round, one round day, which is March 19th. On March 16th, applicants will be notified of their match status, and that's essentially when SOAP also begins. Um, March 19th is also when SOAP ends after several rounds. And then for any programs that are unfilled, those programs will list their spots, and then applicants can then contact these programs directly. And then March 20th is match day, and ceremonies vary between institutions. This is an example really of just how it looks right now on the website, on NRMP's website. This is just what you can see like on the homepage. If you then go into the ranking list up there next to your name, this is essentially the next page that will pop up. If you haven't done this already, you can see that you can find and add programs, which is the first button in blue next to certify list. When you go and hit that button, you go ahead and essentially find the residency program that you want to rank. Once you do that, you'll add them to your ranking list. And then some of I don't have any examples, but essentially once you make your ranking list, it'll ask you for a secondary rank list. And that's for your preliminary positions, like TY programs or prelim IM or Gen Surge. And that'll be based on the primary list, which is the PM&R program, the advanced program. That's all I have for this presentation. I know it's not super long, not as long as the VSLO one, but I wanted to go ahead and move into the Q&A part, which I think is going to be a lot more valuable and helpful. There were a few questions that were submitted, but I'll also give a chance to everybody to message any questions or unmute themselves in case they wanted to ask the panelists directly, since there's not that many of us here tonight. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen too so I can pull up the questions. All right, so if does anybody have any questions just before I get started? No? Okay. Um, so the first question that was submitted for the two panelists that we have here tonight, for Justin and Max, what different things factored into how you made your rank list? And what's a safe number to apply to slash get interviews um, if you feel like to feel like you are likely to match?
So I forget the actual stats. I know it changes every year, but um, I think when I was applying, I was told this is what I was told like prior to everything was if you like ranked more than 10, you had like a 90% or something to match one of them. And if you ranked more than 15, it was like 95. You ranked more than 20, it was like 98. Um, I think case in point, what I've always been told is when it comes to ranking programs, um, you should, if you'd rather go unmatched, then it's okay not to rank them. But if you interviewed somewhere, the only reason not to rank them is if you would rather go unmatched and not go to their program. Which for PM&R would be a pretty hard sell. I think most programs are pretty good, and it's not as contentious as some other residency specialties, maybe where there's granularity between programs. When it came to what my decision, at least, I did rank everywhere I interviewed. As I said, I would rather have not. I'd rather have gone to every place than not gone matched. Um, a big sort of decision point of what to rank in your like top five, top 10 was what I was always told, and this is a myth that some people I think believe that it's been debunked in most of the literature, especially the most recent NMRP data, is that you should rank the program that you want to go to the most, irrespective of if you think you would get in. You should rank that highest. Because where the algorithm works, if you are applying to, let's say, a competitive program and you are ranking them farther down your list because you say you don't think you're going to get in, or maybe you're ranking somewhere that you consider to be more of like a safety school ahead, your odds of getting into that competitive school is such a long shot if you're ranking them farther down the list because more people will have ranked that program like one, two, or three. That if they have seven spots, it only needs seven people to rank it one for you to have zero chance of getting it. Um, so if there's a program you really want to go to, um, and you think, hey, it's not my safest program, but I got interviewed there, I loved it, I would love to go there. You know, don't be afraid to put that high on your list. Because if you put it low and you put safety ones ahead, you almost give yourself like no chance of getting into that place. When it came to me, a lot of it came down to like my gut check, family. I wanted to be somewhere where I had lots of free time to do activities. PM&R is not a field where we're in the hospital 24/7. We're not doing tons of surgeries. So like you do have time usually to like go outdoors, do activities, and being in sunny California was kind of my goal to be able to accomplish that. Um, Sort of the main thing I would think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just like it was a little confusing, I think, representing the match algorithm visually. But if you literally just think about it in terms of like the algorithm will go down your list in terms of like if program A if your first program is available, then you will tentatively match there, and then as the algorithm goes through that program's list, if there are people that they rank higher than you, then you slowly get bumped down, but it always goes based off of like it goes down your list and it fills where like the spot is available based off of your list. So I agree with Max, like always rank based off of your preference. And then in terms of, like what to prioritize, I think there's a lot of things to prioritize and it can get kind of overwhelming. So one thing that I've done this year is I have like tried to get in contact with a lot of the residents at programs that I like am ranking to really get like the hot take as far as like what the daily life is like. Because especially, I have a much different perspective. I feel like this year now being in residency, like my questions are a lot different. What are the didactics like? How approachable are the faculty? How willing are the faculty to like change things if you're frustrated by things? Is there a lot of commuting? Is there free food at the hospital? Is there free parking? Like some of these things that you might not think about. And in med school, you might be more focused on like, oh, they have this really cool rotation. They have these fellowship opportunities, which don't get me wrong, those are like super important. But I think it's kind of like this balance of career trajectory and like your lifestyle that you kind of think about what's most important to you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I'll take a second to also introduce a panelist that just joined. Nick, are you there?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Sorry for a little bit late. Uh,
No, no,
been a
you're
little bit
completely
crazy.
fine. You're completely fine. Thanks for joining us. We kind of just moved into a Q&A part, literally now. So, it's completely fine. If you want to just give some input into our first question, it's just um, uh, essentially Justin was kind of saying that like there's a lot of things, but are there any things that that you factored into how you made your rank list?
So it's all going to be based. It's all different. You should do your rank list based off of what your preferences are. So a little bit about me. Hi guys. I'm Nick Averell, DO. I am a PM&R resident at Temple. Um, for me, my biggest value was I wanted to be close to family, and I wanted to go to a good program that has a good name. Right, those were the big things. So like, so for me, like I wanted to stay close to Jersey. So I ranked all the programs that I interviewed at that were within the tri-state area. So, and if they were in the tri-state area, they were outside my top five, outside my top seven, even. So that was my first preference. And then obviously when it comes to your rank list, it comes down to like, don't just look at the Doximity rankings at, oh, this is number 8 and this is 10. That's where I should rank this one higher. It's like, okay, no, like, what do you want to do? Also, how do you want your life to be? What life still happens in residency? How do you picture your life to be? You know, like you're now done medical school. For many of you, like you're gonna be entering that point in your life where it's time to, some of you are gonna be in that point of life where it's like, okay, I just want to work and have friends and go out and go out in the city, enjoy the little bit of money you do make in residency. Well, other people are gonna be like, oh, okay, now that I finally have a salary, my girlfriend and I can finally get engaged, we can have kids, we can get married. And these are things to think about, like, city versus more of a suburban area clinic. And these are you want to base your rank list based off of those things. So again, like Justin made a great point, reaching out to him. Like he actually reached out to me about Temple when he had his Temple interview, and a couple other people have reached out, and I always give them like the truth. Like I tell them how I feel about the program, the pros and the good, bad, and the ugly of every. And residents are always want to share that information, like because every program has a lot of things to offer you. You have to figure out what you value, though. Um, I'll leave it at that for now.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thank you for touching on all that, all those things. Yeah, I guess it really does just depend on the applicant themselves. So there's a lot of like reflection on this step. I guess one of the questions that we have that may be like a little more specific is do you think that inpatient heavy training can limit outpatient procedural confidence later on?
Um,
In
this,
regard to like the whole ranking process and all this.
so yeah, I think it can. I mean, it depends. You should rank. That's another thing you should be looking into is and knowing your programs is are they like look at their go for their alumni list. How many are matching into TBI, SCI? How many are doing spasticity? How many are doing doing interventional pain and pain medicine? How many are doing non-traditional routes or and also like how many are just general physiatrists or just working at sniffs and doing this because that usually that's people usually go where their opportunities are, right? And they go where their opportunities are, where they feel most comfortable at. If you're in a clinic field where you do a whole bunch of inpatient rehab, but you don't do enough procedures, and again, that's what fellowship's there for. So don't ever feel discouraged. You know, you gotta remember that no, all residency programs and PM&R, we are all accredited by ACGME. There is a baseline of procedures, hours you're supposed to do to complete, but your experiences are different. Someone that did 100 EMGs where they were the main guy doing the EMG versus someone that watched someone do 100 EMGs is gonna have a different level of experience and confidence in doing an EMG. Um, you should, you should look to be at programs that are going to go where you want to go. If you're trying to do sports or a procedure thing, yeah, you should probably value one that's more outpatient based and has those clinics in place, and so the one that has more inpatient. But it does, and again, it's not you need to understand another thing you need to understand is that PM&R is not internal medicine. It is not surgery where there's highly competitive fellowships. Yes, pain is more competitive, but with anesthesia making with recent changes in anesthesia reimbursements, more and more anesthesiologists are staying in their field and not going into pain. Almost everyone I know matches into their fellowships. All my seniors at Temple have matched into their fellowships without an issue. They're for top choice. 50% of TBI fellowships go unmatched. A whole bunch of SCIs, even pains go unmatched. If you want a fellowship, you will get a fellowship. You just need to figure out what you want to do and go to a program that aligns with your goals. A lot of this you can find by reading on their websites and asking the residents.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any input with that question?
Yeah, I was going to say, every program offers, it has 18 months of inpatient and, outpatient can be a little more spread out depending on where you're going. A decision that personally I can speak about was, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to get enough outpatient procedures. And procedures aren't created equally. I think as Nick mentioned, like if you go to certain programs, they have lots of fellows, for example, and they might be doing a lot of the procedures. Whereas some other programs might not have as many fellows, you might have the opportunity as like a earlier PGY-2, PGY-3 to do lots of those procedures. And that was important to me, was to be somewhere where I wasn't always just shadowing. And so that was an important component of that. And I think, when you're a PM&R resident, you do want to get a good foundational training. PM&R is so unique in that if you talk to any physiatrist for the most part, they have done different things in their career. They might have gone into it thinking they're doing SCI, and they might do SCI for a while, and then they end up doing some outpatient stuff. And then they might do interventional spine stuff, and then find out, 10 years into their practice, they actually want to also do part-time at a skilled nursing facility and do inpatient rehab. Very little physiatrists that I've talked to that have been in practice for 10, 15 years are just doing one thing, unless they're super specialized at one thing. But that's more the exception to the rule. So in general, you want a good training and you want to go somewhere where you feel like you're going to get a good inpatient and outpatient experience. And that was important to me. And I think as Nick mentioned, a big thing is looking at where residents go after they finish training. I want to be somewhere where I knew roughly half of the class was going to go right into general rehab training because I wanted to know they felt confident. They could just finish residency and pick up a job and they could run a nursing facility floor. They could run an SCI floor with no issue. But I also wanted to know that at least half of them were going into some kind of, specialty fellowship, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, um, so that I knew that that was a possibility and that they were getting into good programs and they felt confident they could apply to those places. So that was the balance I wanted. Um, Individually, if you like more inpatient, then maybe you're focused more on people who are going just into general rehab right away. If you're focused more on outpatient, maybe you want to have more of a balance of people who are going mainly into specialties outpatient wise. But if you're not sure, then a good rule of thumb is to find a program that sends people doing both things. So you know you're getting the best and most optimal training to make a decision later on.
Okay, thank you. That's great insight. Do you have anything else to add, Justin?
No, not really. I think like what Max said about finding a really well balanced program, I think is really good advice because for example, like I rotated with a interventional pain physiatrist this year who we're in a pretty rural community here in Myrtle Beach, and so she does all the interventional pain procedures, but she also does Botox, and there's no Botox in like 100 miles of like where we're at, and so like being able to be very flexible in like the kinds of jobs that you can be recruited for as an attending. I think it's just better to have more skills. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely speak for myself that I'm not sure exactly what I want to do in PM&R. I mean, I guess that's it's also one of the questions that came in is just what should applicants look for if they're unsure between academic versus private practice in the future? And I guess we kind of touched on it already. I guess how it would be more useful to the people on this call is essentially like as a person generating their rank list, like what are the things that they should look for to help maybe make them make that decision later on?
Yeah, I think going back to the point of just seeing where residents go, that's the best way to figure out, how that program on an average, prepares their residents when they graduate to feel comfortable doing whatever they want to do. There are plenty of people who go to non-academic institutions for residency who that program churns out people who go to academic places for jobs. That does happen, and vice versa. People who go to academic places. I can speak for Stanford specifically. Like we have, we're an academic institution, but a lot of us don't necessarily love research, and we're not necessarily going here to pursue an academic fellowship afterward or an academic job afterward. There's plenty of us who go into occupational medicine or go into just general rehab and places. And so not all places are created equal. The name is one thing, but really, really looking on the websites and the Instagrams, I feel like Instagram is always very nice to look at where every year they're saying people are going. Gives you a good idea of what that program excels at and what their residents during their training, what they gravitate to, and what they feel like that's what I want to do with my career. That really tells you a lot. Because during the selling point of the interview, they're going to tell you they're good at everything. They're going to tell you that they have great didactics, that they prioritize outpatient stuff, that everyone gets lots of Botox, that everyone does lots of EMGs, that they're the best at this, best at that. Really, to know the outcomes of that is to figure out what the people who are leaving the program actually are doing. That's really the true way to figure out what that program, excels at. Because no program will do good at everything. Every program has their pros and their cons, and seeing what people do outside of the work is really figuring out what the residents actually like about that program.
Yeah, that's great insight. I've definitely been using social media in that way. A question kind of related to that is like really like evaluating the stability of a program. Some of the programs have gone through like I guess like changes in their leadership, whether it be like program directors or APDs or even just people on staff. How do you advise applicants to use that in, I guess, generating the rank list and I guess and even asking more questions to the residents and faculty?
So that's where, being very astute and just pay attention to things, right? Like I remember, you know, I remember monitoring and tracking on Vslo and on errors when doing the application stuff, like, oh, who the program coordinator is, who is the PD, and like see if that stuff's changing a lot, if that's changed a lot over the last year and a half, if that's changed once or twice. That's important. Attendings are going to come and go. They're going to take contracts, move elsewhere. I think the most important thing is that when it comes to program stability, you know, good culture. That's really going to be the key, right? Because like I said, attendings come and go. Hell, PDs retire, they change jobs. But if you have a good culture and a good system in place, like a good organization can survive. Good organizations can survive. A change in ownership or survive a change in PD, right? Um, so get to know you know if the residency programs have like those open houses or those like happy hours, go to them and see how like they all get along. um do they get along? Do they help each other? Because there's really like I like to think there's like three types of PM&R programs, right? There are your programs where it's all institutionalized, and what I mean by that is that the program itself is very much like, oh, we're going to do this, and this for you, and we're going to make sure that we're going to have we're going to do this. And then there's other ones where it is more residency based, where it's like the residents help each other out and make sure that they hit everything they want to go make sure their dreams come true. I mean, we're going to get you the right connections, get you on research, yada, yada, yada. And the third one is there are PM&R programs out there that are very individually driven, where there are absolute superstars in their program that do all this stuff, but the program really doesn't, have that type of mindset, go for it mindset. So you have to just figure out what type of, again, you have to look at the programs, look at the residents, figure out what type of program you want to be at and what you want to go for. And I know that kind of sounds like a loop, but it's really the truth.
Yeah, I would definitely echo Nick's point as well. And I think, going back to what Max said about like in the interview, you know, in the interview, like we're selling ourselves, but the program is also selling themselves too. And so I think it can be a little bit awkward, like we ask questions like, oh, what are some things that the program is working on? And, sometimes the program directors are willing to speak about things. But I think that, a lot of the time the resident, like really getting in contact with people. And if you don't know any resident, I think just emailing the coordinator and just saying, I would love to talk to somebody about the program. Are there any residents that are willing to? And I guarantee you, people are nice in PM&R and they want to share their experience. So I've never had like I've never struck out doing that. And you'll really get the hot take as far as like what the three kinds of programs that Nick is talking about, like how much do you have to hustle? How many resources does the program actually have available for you, and how much are you going to have to kind of find your way on your own, essentially?
I think one additional thing is like, so the vibe check is always a word that people use. And having sat on the interview panels this year and seen how residents talk about applicants and how we give input to our faculty about who we want to rank in what order. Um, the vibe check is a true thing. And it's partially because program directors and people who are deciding the rank list consistently every year, they have their own preferences on what they would like their program to look like. Um, every residency class might have a different group of people, but in general, there's sort of a theme, whether that institution, what kinds of people they want in their program. And that can be from a personal standpoint or an academic achievement standpoint. And so while the classes will change, usually the vibes of programs stay pretty consistent. And so um, if you were on your residency interviews and you did not vibe well with the program, there's a good chance that the residents also didn't vibe well with you, and it's usually mutually exclusive. And so um, it really comes down to, the places that you feel like you really had a good connection with the residents, is likely a place they also felt that vice versa. And so like they're more likely to rank you higher on their list as well. Um, and because the turnover doesn't really happen that often, and they keep the same themes of people every year, you want to be in a program that you feel like you gelled well with those people, because it's likely that your incoming class that you join will have similar themed people with similar hobbies and similar activities and similar charisma. And so you want to be somewhere where you feel like you gelled with those people, even if you're not going to be part of that class with those people that you interviewed, um, your class will be likely similar. And so think about that. And the vibe check is a real thing. And just, going for your gut is always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It seems like culture is something that keeps being emphasized. Okay, so now I guess we're gonna transition from, kind of what we've been talking about, like gathering information of like how to essentially come up with your general rank list to like, okay, making the list itself. And Olivia asked a great question, which is, from my understanding, is just like, do you put like the TY and prelims like underneath the advanced and categorical programs on your primary list? I think that's her question because that's also a question that I had.
Yeah.
My understanding is that you can do that if you would be okay with just matching to that at least.
Yeah. So that's not typical. Most people have their primary rank list for their advanced programs, and then they have their secondary rank list for their first year programs, their TYs, their prelims. And you're right. So you have your number one program you want to go to, your advanced program, your PM&R. You have that program number one. And then off of that, you have your secondary rank list. And from there, you list in order the TYs and prelims that you would want to match with first. So the minute that you get on your advanced list, the minute that your PM&R program you match with them, it goes to your secondary list and then it goes into that order. And so, for example, for me, because I applied all over the country, I had for my PM&R rank list, I had some programs in California, some programs in the East Coast, some programs in the Midwest. I didn't want to go to a prelim on the East Coast if I was going to go do my PM&R in the West Coast. So my secondary rank lists looked very different. Each one looked very different, the order I listed. So if I listed Stanford high, then for that secondary list, I listed most of my California TYs first and prelims first, and then I listed the East Coast ones second and third and fourth and fifth. Vice versa, if I listed an East Coast program high, then I listed mainly my East Coast TYs and prelims for my secondary list. Um, so you can have very different secondary lists, and that's where it does take some time when you're doing the actual filling out of the application. It can take some time if you're trying to strategically figure out if I move somewhere for a PM&R program, do I also want to move there for my first year, or do I want to stay local for the first year? You have the options, and that's one of the great things about the system is you do have the ability, if you don't take some time with it, to strategically make sure you don't maybe move twice. Again, you can also put prelims and TYs on your primary list at the end, like was mentioned. But again, if that gets picked for you, then you don't have a secondary list at that point because you would just have you just say would have a prelim for your primary list, and then there's no secondary list for that. So then you just go to that prelim, and then you'd have to reapply the following year, which I know people do. Mainly, I've heard people doing that if they don't feel like they have enough PM&R programs on their primary list. I would not advise putting a prelim or TY ahead of a PM&R program on their primary list, unless you would rather go to that first year and not go to the PM&R program at all. Um, but if anyone has more questions about specifically the strategy of ranking, that's like a whole other conversation in terms of the primary and the secondary list.
Sorry, hi, it's Olivia. I just wanted to just clarify one thing too. In order to get to that supplemental or like secondary list, you have to match the first thing.
Yeah,
So if you don't match a PM&R program, then you wouldn't be like you would go totally unmatched in theory unless you had something else underneath those.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
The secondary list is only gets shown the minute that you match into a PM&R advanced program on your primary list.
But to your question, Olivia, so I think your kind of question is more about like if you're concerned about like not matching potentially, like would you do that as a backup? So you can certainly do that, but you have to be 100% sure. You have to have thought through this whole kind of like process and think if I don't match, then I know 100% I'm going to reapply. Like this is the field that I want to be in. And certainly you could because that's what you would ultimately soap into anyway, is a prelim or a TY. I think for the TYs and prelims that you do have that you might put under, I would kind of look at them and would if you have a prelim where you're going to be working the wards like 11 months out of the year, that could be really, really hard to like change anything about your application. Like I have a TY this year and I have a lot of time. I had a lot of time to work on my stuff and completely change it. And so I think that that's like way more valuable. And looking if they have a PM&R elective and just sort of like thinking ahead and not just like blindly just kind of like putting down like all of your prelims and TYs.
Thank you.
I think that was kind of exactly like what we were looking for. And to Alyssa's link that she put for essentially like the email that you would get on the 16th, I think it would definitely specify exactly what you have matched into, like whether it's a PM&R program, year two, three, four, or a prelim program, and then give you the opportunity to participate in SOAP that week. And so I definitely want to make sure we talk about SOAP a little bit. Um, just the last question that Francesca put in is essentially how much stock should we put into post-interview communication, which is also a great question that I also have. Some programs communicate back with after a thank you email. Some programs offer second looks. Um, in general, what has been your experience in your residency programs? Like, how much should an applicant really take those into consideration in regards to ranking?
Little to none, in my opinion. You should, don't. Some programs are going to email you and they'll respond to every email. Um, that must be they have a really good program coordinator that likes to respond to everyone. That might have nothing to do with the program director being like, "Hey, we gotta make sure this person comes here." Do not do that based off the idea that they might like you, dislike you. Every program varies in how much they reach out to people because they don't want to give that type of illusion. Um, they have their rank list. They're gonna put it. You rank based on how much you like the program and how much which programs you want to go to, not based off of, oh, if I rank this program one, I think I'm gonna match here. Don't do that. Do what's do your list purely based off what's the best for your life and your career.
Yeah, I agree. Don't take any stock in it. It does truly depend on the coordinator of the program. And for example, we had a coordinator like 2 years ago who uh, didn't respond as much. And so I think that that sometimes made people think that they weren't that there no response was a bad thing. And then now we have a coordinator who responds a lot more. And so it doesn't mean much. It just means are they responsive or not. Um, there was a question about prelim and TY in the group chat. I think that's a huge thing. Thank you, Justin. I think you just answered that a little bit. It's on a spectrum, I would say. So this is something that is a misnomer that most people don't quite understand. So in general, TYs are supposed to be a transitional year, meaning similar to your clerkship year, where you do a few months of IM wards and then maybe some electives in like surgery or OB-GYN or peds, and then usually some like more chill electives like outpatient chill things, maybe like a radiology, maybe a research month. So kind of you can kind of may have more options. Whereas a prelim internal medicine month is supposed to be more like you're functioning like the categorical intern, where you are doing mainly internal medicine wards months. So on the wards, on the blocks, and then you're also doing some electives, but your electives are usually more IM electives like cards, GI, poem. Though that's in general how it is thought of, but every program is different. There are TY programs that function just like internal medicine programs, and there are internal medicine prelims that function like TYs, where they offer a ton of electives, and so they're not created equal. It is a spectrum. In general, TY falls on one side and prelim falls on the other side, but each one's different. So you really do have to look at how many months of IM wards are you doing? What are the electives they offer? They say they may offer 6 months of electives, but are those electives all do you have an option between just cards, GI, palm, and infectious disease? Like, are those your electives? Because those are like IM electives. Or are your electives like radiology, research, um, outpatient advocacy? I did a medical coroner's elective for like a month where I just went to like the coroner's office and worked with the pathologist. So it is very different and there's a continuum. So just look into each one because that will sway maybe your decision on if you want to do more, more of an IM program or TY program because they might not actually be what they say they are.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Another question came in about letters of intent. Justin, thank you for that answer. I agree, but if anybody else has anything different, please feel free to share.
Just rule of thumb, just don't send more than one. That will
Yeah.
look very bad. It's
Yeah,
okay
PM&R,
to send one that says they're your number one, and it's okay to send an additional to your second or third that you have highly ranked them and that you would love to go to their program, but do not say that you have ranked them number one if they're not your number one. Because they do, PM&R is a small field, people talk, and that word gets out. Um, so in general, they can be helpful, but just don't lie about where you're ranking someone.
yeah, don't. I really would only do it if I really would only do it if you have like one program you really love and you really say, like, hey, I want you to let you know I ranked them one. You know, you can do the other ones. I rank them highly, but like, what is highly? That's on a spectrum. For some people, that might be like, oh, rank top three. Some other people that might be like top seven. You know what I mean? Every applicant's different. I don't think that matters too much for them. Yeah, just don't lie about it though. If you know, don't send. Say you rank them one to your top three letters of 10 to your top three. Going, they ranked you one when you didn't, because especially like it's such a small field. I wouldn't go any further. Do that, people might get sour grapes.
I've actually heard from some PDs too that they actually, if you say I'm ranking you highly, then that's kind of like I'm not ranking you number one. And
Yeah.
it's almost better to just not say anything at all and just express really genuine interest at like with a thank you email after your interview.
Kevin, I'm seeing your message. Every program has an internal system, so I mean, I haven't seen as a second year at Temple doesn't let us be a part of the grading interview system yet. But from the what I've talked to from my threes and fours is that basically when they do an interview for someone, um obviously like the PD and the staff set up who's getting the interviews based off of X parameters, but that the whatever they scored on based off of their interview, based off of their board scores, research, yada yada yada. That's all in like an internal document that they do, and they rank how much they weighted this stuff. So every program is different in that. Truly, like PM&R is more of a holistic reviewer of all this. That's why you know if you're a third year right now, next year when you do it, when you send your applications, you're gonna it's good. Your PM&Rs come a little bit slower than say like your IM, FM psychs where in other fields where they might get interviews same day. It might be at least like a couple of days for your first couple of PM&Rs start trickling in.
Yeah, I would say it's very variable. Which programs find what is important. I know some programs like don't care about one category and then they really care about something else, and you truly don't know. And then a lot of it becomes like Nick said, becomes sort of a pre-interview score where like based on whatever they value, your board scores, your research, your hobbies, whatever you said, whatever they value, they almost give you like a pre-score. And then your interview, and then maybe if you did an away there or something and they got to know you more, then that's almost a separate score slash category, and that can just bring your kind of score up or down. And for some programs, it can sway more. For some, it sways less. But everyone's different. And so in general, it just becomes how well-rounded are you is how I've always been told is the best way to sort of show off yourself in a PM&R application is to, try to be well-rounded because you don't know what programs value what things unless you are sitting in on the meeting and you can hear what they're saying, which none of us are.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for answering that. I want to just take the last 5 minutes to talk about SOAP, because the kind of what I've been seeing online is just to have a plan in place. And if you guys could just essentially talk about your experience navigating this part of the process, and did you have a plan in place? If you did have it in place, how much should we be preparing as applicants? Yeah, I'll leave the floor open.
Plan in place for what? I'm sorry, I feel like I missed the part.
For soap specifically, like in the case that you don't match. So in the
So
case that
yeah,
you either don't match a PM&R program, or that you don't match entirely.
yeah. So I feel like my med school talked about it pretty well in preparation for it. I'll just share like how the mindset I had. Uh, so you're gonna get the email, the first initial email saying, "Hey, you matched or didn't match." They say you have about like an hour before things start opening. You have access to that portal. Um, if I was matched, I was thrilled. If I weren't to have matched, I would took that hour and just processed it and, grieved a little bit just because, that is a traumatic thing. You worked really hard and you didn't get the result you wanted. And that always sucks. But that doesn't mean that you're doomed forever or condemned to anything, condemned to a lesser life or lesser career. Um, uh, with that in mind, with your mindset, you need to reach out within the hour. I would reach out to your medical school. I'd reach out to your advisors, tell them that you're in the SOAP. They'll already know as well. See what if you need extra layers of recommendation, if you need help with them, they usually play a role in helping with you as well sometimes, and really work on just getting ready to send applications out. I then would then think about, okay, what do I want to do? For me, this is again something you need to think about, right? Because PM&R is a 4-year to every year you do of extra training is a year less of attending salary you make. In reality, you have to think about dollars and cents here. Yes, we have made a big investment to go to medical school, become doctors. So if you didn't match PM&R here, you have to think, okay, do I want to then do a SOAP year and then reapply and then maybe not match again? You need to think about like, okay, if PM&R is truly what I love, I highly recommend doing it. If it's like PM&R I liked, but I also liked IM, then I would suggest maybe looking into your IM FM options as well as other options. That because the sooner you get into your residency training and get into your career, financially it's better for you. That being said, PM&R doesn't always have SOAP spots. Next thing I would do is try and match at a prelim program that is best fitting for my current situation, close to home or affiliated with my home institution, something where it's like I have support and I can I know where I'm going. Like for me, I always wanted to do I would have wanted to try and do my TY or prelim at where I did my clerkships at because they had TYs and IM prelims and go from there. And lastly, after the SOAP process, it's so quick that you're just gonna be moving. You're gonna go do the applications and you're gonna do the interviews and everything's done by Friday. You know what I mean? So you don't really have a lot of time to process it all about like reapplying. Go through the SOAP. So that's why I say I really recommend using that hour to try and think things through if it happens. Because after that, once SOAP's ended, you can then think about, okay, what's next? I didn't get into PM&R. What am I going to do differently? Then you can truly you can reflect on how your interviews went, how your application went. You can reach out to people to review your personal statement and your application. And if you look for red flags you don't think you have, or if you have red flags, you can then think, okay, well, I can't fix my board scores. All I can do is do really well in step three, or I don't have any research. There's all these resources out there that get started in some research, so far and so forth.
Thank you, Nick. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this quite a bit because, I went through the SOAP last year. Uh, so I would say, and I'm also happy to like talk to anybody like just one-on-one too, like about my experience. So please, like, I'll put my number here and like don't hesitate to shoot me a text message. But um, I would say the first thing to think about if you're applying this year is how did the cycle go? Because if you had a lot of interviews and you don't match, I think you have more to go off of your second time around versus if you only got like three or four reviews your first time around, it just may be kind of like it might, it's not impossible for you to match your second time, but it might just be kind of painful and disappointing your second time around. So I think that's kind of the first thing to really think about is how did I do this cycle? And if you did really well, I still think, thinking about when that time comes, because during that match week, you're not really gonna have the mental capacity to really like think critically about this. You might, think impulsively about it. And so I think like thinking now, like, would I be happy in another specialty? Or is it PM&R or bust? And I think if PM&R is kind of a way to get somewhere else for you, if you are really interested in sports medicine, like there's family medicine, there's IM, there's peds, there's yeah. If you want to do pain, there's neuro, there's psych. Some maybe IM. It's a little bit harder. Um, if you want to do TBI, you can do that through neurology. Like there's other ways to sort of like, if you're interested in certain aspects of PM&R, there's other ways to kind of do PM&R without doing PM&R. And so I think like thinking critically about that aspect of it too. Uh, unless if you are interested in, neuro rehab and spasticity and MSK and you're really like invested in rehabilitation, then, like I was thinking that way. So I knew if I didn't match, I know 100% I'm gonna go through the SOAP, I'm gonna get a prelim or a TY, and I'm gonna figure out what I need to do and reapply. Versus like if you're thinking that you might be happy in family medicine or I am, then I think it's really worth like even asking some of your like some of the faculty you've worked with this year for like updated letters of recommendation. Not that you expect to have this result, but I think that being as prepared for it as possible is going to help you with your anxiety if you feel like maybe you have a borderline number of interviews. Ask for family medicine, IM, a sub-I, letters of recommendation, start writing a personal statement because you want to put your best foot forward in the SOAP. Like one of my friends last year, he didn't match PM&R and he soaped into family medicine at UW. So like he did very well for himself. And I think that he probably thought ahead and he like knew what he was going to do. And so he probably had a personal statement planned. He didn't have to stress about that. He just had to focus on picking the right programs for him in the moment because it's really like not a lot of time. You get that email at 10 a.m. By 11 a.m. your school's contacting you to go to the school, learn all about the SOAP. You're like you can't even process it because you're in such shock. And then you have 45 programs that you have to apply to by 8 a.m. the next morning. So you have to in one day, and not even one day, you have to decide which programs you're going to apply to. You have to decide what you're going to prioritize within those programs, and you have to apply to them and submit everything, which in and of itself takes like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours just to like click all the buttons. And then the next day, Tuesday and Wednesday, you get cold emailed from 8 a.m. to, I mean, I was on the East Coast, so those West Coast programs, they could call me at like 10 o'clock at night to interview me. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday you go through those rounds. So, it's very exhausting. And I think being prepared for it, really thinking through like those steps you would take I think is important. And again, like happy to talk with anybody about it, like one-on-one too.
Yeah, I think that's thank you for sharing, Justin. I think that's amazing advice for all the applicants on this call right now. Um, that's pretty much like all I was kind of hoping to learn about with the soap. I think there's going to be very specific questions that people may have individually based on their own situations. I will kind of like just give a few seconds if anybody has any other questions to our panelists. Want to say thank you again for your time and for staying a couple minutes extra. If I may, have the panelists just stay a little bit after so I can take a screenshot and for our social media. Thank you for your time, Nick. If you can um, have your camera on. If not, it's completely cool. To our attendees, some people put their contact info. I will also put my contact info. I'm an M4, but I'm also very open to helping in any way that I can. Here's my phone.
Thank you, everyone.